Hey, Shalom Akim. Call hello Yahweh, Shem Yahushua, Shem Hodash. And once again, double honors go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Salutations also go out to the fellow Akim that are pushing the truth across the four corners of the earth, trying to wake up the remaining hopeful elect. This is Nam on the DC camp. And, well, go into this Jonathan Majors trial, if you want to call it that. So they managed to convict him. Are any of you surprised? And some things I was not aware of concerning his so-called girlfriend. See, this goes to show you that the saying is true, or I should say the warning. When you get with someone, it's wise to get someone that has just as much to lose as you do. And I'm not blaming the victim here, but what he did, and men will do this long before a woman will. A man will pick a woman out the gutter. All right. It's not wise, no, because men, let's face it, men are in it for love, women, for business. All right. That's the way, especially now, in America. All right. Again, not blaming the victim. I have come to understand that the DA let the cops know that they will not be pressing charges against her. Why is that? The cops were ready to put the cuffs on her, but it came down that nope, we're not going to prosecute. Nope. What the fuck was that? Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get into this video here because, of course, he's going to explain it best. I got to go to the professor here. All right, and actually I got two. Well, four, but I'm going to use two because we'll be here all morning if I did it the way I had thought about doing it earlier. So here we go. Remember, things here, this is not natural. Remember, we are in captivity. Any relationship you have, just remember it's not the way it's supposed to be. You do the best you can. If you have someone that's working with you, fine. I applaud you. All right? But it's being here in this cesspool, you have to understand. It's more stress on you. You got this push and pull dynamic. I mean, and you're dealing with the oppressor and everybody else because of who we are. So with us, I mean, anyway, let's go ahead with the video.
Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the... I haven't said much about this case because it involves celebrity and entertainment, and while that's catnip to a lot of black folks, it's castor oil. When it comes to the people involved, there's no one that I care to cheer for. But as for the white media's focus on this, well, that is worth commenting on. The first thing, though, that I want to say is all the people are talking about how this verdict has gotten him fired by Marvel. Marvel has now fired him. Anyone who thinks that Marvel was ever going to have this guy back for even a minute, you're a fool. They made their minds up a long time ago on that one. This verdict merely saved them the awkwardness of having to make up an explanation for why they didn't want him back, while simultaneously announcing who they've recast him with. This is not about Jonathan Majors, however, any more than my videos about Bill Cosby or R. Kelly were about them. I say that because there's some folks who get stuck on stupid whenever we talk about these issues, and it comes down to, well, who were they snuggling up with? Who were they having relations with? We already know about that. This is not about them. You have the same contingent of clowns, however, who are desperate to certify that black men are uniquely criminal. When Bill Cosby was getting raked over the coals and he got convicted, you had white media suck-ups like Eli Mistal, who were mad as hell at Bill Cosby, and they were also celebrating him being sent to prison because, well, I guess because he dared to claim that he was innocent. That seemed to be the main thing that they were angry about. How dare he claim that he's innocent? By the way, this goofball Eli Mistal, he never ever went that hard over Harvey Weinstein or even Donald Trump. There's a number of these meat puppets online who are dedicated to demonizing black men, and they've had a field day with the whole Jonathan Majors conviction. Now, while a lot of these Twitter and YouTube accounts are surely white racist sock puppets, it's also true that a lot of them are not. These bootlicks look at what their white paymasters in the white media say, or who they hope will pay them to say these things. It's mindlessly repeated. That's their job, or rather the one that they're desperately hoping they'll get. Just yesterday we were talking about Malika Andrews and how ESPN uses her to demonize, slander, and defame black men while making sure not to say anything even remotely critical of white athletes. So what we're seeing is standard operating procedure for them. Don't kid yourself. These people aren't just coming out of nowhere. When the Cosby verdict was predictably thrown out because it was illegal, these same bootlicks were furious. You had Eli Mistal cursing and ranting like he lost his mind, assuming he ever had one. They were going overboard to show that they were more outraged that Cosby had been set free than the white racists that they work for on cable TV. These clowns who do this, they're auditioning for a white media job, or perhaps a better one than what they've already got. Before we go any further, though, I'm sure we'll have some clowns saying the same thing here that we heard about Nate Parker when he was being. Can't be surprised when this happens. Again, this isn't about Jonathan Majors personally. The white media isn't covering him so prominently because he made a name for himself in Hollywood. They're doing this because he's no pun intended, but it does mean we need to understand why these things are happening. Danny Masterson didn't get anywhere near as much attention as Jonathan Majors has.
Nope.
And Masterson was convicted of raping 2 women and charged with raping 3. He didn't allegedly get into a physical altercation with one woman where she gave as good as she got. Who, by the way, was on video chasing after him. That's what happened to Jonathan Majors, though. If Majors was indeed the aggressor all throughout this, and this delicate, fragile white woman who he was ruthlessly brutalizing was innocent and lucky that he didn't kill her, then why did she chase after him across several blocks of the city? Strange thing to do with somebody who you were scared was going to kill you. He fled the alleged scene of the crime. So why did she chase him halfway across the city? Look, no matter what you may think of Jonathan Majors personally, and I'm certainly not part of his fan club, the reality is the NYPD arrested his accuser, but the DA's office made clear that the fix was in from the jump.
There you go.
The prosecutors said from the very start that they didn't care what the NYPD told them. They didn't care.
Did you read that? Look at that. Before, this is the officers. Kramer continues in his statement to people. Before we walked into the police precinct, the DA's office made clear that they would not be charging Ms. Jabari with any offense. Keep that in mind.
What evidence the NYPD had, they would not prosecute this woman under any circumstances. They were not going to bring charges against her no matter what. They said that before an arrest had even been made. Now, have you ever in your entire life try bringing charges? Have you ever heard, especially of the DA's office in New York, telling the NYPD, you go and arrest somebody, we're telling you in advance, we're not bringing any charges, we're not going to prosecute? When do they ever do that? Answer, they don't. So the DA's office was not conducting an investigation. It was conducting a railroading. They wanted Jonathan Majors to be put on trial. Evidence and facts be made that they were going after him and him alone. Mia Ponsetto was caught on video assaulting a black child, but Alvin Bragg refused to punish her. He said, let's just go ahead and let her go. And that racist attack was caught on video. There's no doubt what happened there. It's not that Jonathan Majors was some huge criminal, it's that he's black, and the white media hasn't had a black celebrity to demonize in such a long time. They needed one. Gotta keep up that steady drumbeat. Ultimately, though, the responsibility for this fiasco rests with Mr. Majors himself. I made a video around the time of his arraignment in which I pointed out that too many of these Negroes in Hollywood and in entertainment in general refuse to take control of who is in their circle. They just keep letting people around them who shouldn't be. They ignore all the warning signs. A month ago, Will Smith had an incident where a former so-called assistant of his claimed, without a shred of evidence mind you, that he had walked in on Will Smith and Dwayne Martin having a gay sexual encounter. Not surprisingly, this hanger-on announced that he also is planning to write a book. I guess this is his idea of pre-publicity. What his book's going to be about, I can't imagine. The guy has no talent, he has no stories to tell. All he can do is spin yarns about the real celebrities who he was in the orbit of briefly. And since nobody knew who this guy was before last week, and this shows how important he's not. And yes, it has been long surmised, even by those of us in the black media, that Will Smith is most likely bisexual, if not bi-curious. It's also true that this Belial character is just trying to make a quick buck for himself. Without Will Smith, he wouldn't exist. He was simply part of Smith's entourage. And this is what he does to repay him for that. Between this guy and Jada Pinkett, Will Smith has more zeros around him than Pearl Harbor. You want to know why certain important people have a turnover in personnel? Why they regularly dismiss people from their staffs, even the ones who didn't break their rules? Or they do it for the smallest misstep? It's because they can't afford to keep people around too long. It becomes dangerous. When you climb the ladder, people start scheming against you. And when it comes to black men, the easiest way to get his money is to claim rape or a beating or both. It's a formula as old as white supremacy itself. Read Othello. Jonathan Majors chose to have this woman around, and he chose to keep her around. And some of the evidence that came out of trial pretty much made it clear that these two had already had issues before now. Clearly, he's not a good judge of character, to say the least. There was obviously some real dysfunction going on, and he wasn't handling his business. He wasn't keeping the chaos out of his operation. The first time you got problems with this woman, she's supposed to go. You ghost her, block her number, inform the doorman that she's not to be let in. Hell, go and file a restraining order. That way you've done it first before she can try to control the narrative. I don't know what it was that led Majors to have this woman around. I don't know what, if anything, she was doing that was so important that he thought he simply couldn't do without her. But now, she's cost him his career. And given how hard these New York Klansmen have been going after him, they might put him in prison before it's all over. You can practically count the seconds until that woman files a civil suit now that there's been a criminal conviction. Majors and his legal team are vowing to clear his name, but they've been saying that ever since this fiasco began. And the white media won't rehabilitate his image either, not like they do for every white celebrity or famous person who's accused. See, they let everybody else live it down. If you're black, forget about it. Mel Gibson was recorded engaged in a racist, threatening rant with his then-girlfriend. Movies, directing movies as if nothing had changed. Roman Polanski raped and sodomized a child, he fled the U.S., and he's been working without skipping a beat. Big-name Hollywood stars still compete to be in his movies, and he's even won an Oscar, so the Academy has no problem recognizing him. Louis C.K. admits to sexually harassing his female co-workers, and the white media puts together a so-called documentary meant to celebrate his comeback. They don't mention any of these men's past behavior or crimes anymore. They put that in the past. Oh, we're not dealing...
And for you idiots out there that just continue to be in this, I don't know, bubble. I mean, so many of you have fallen victim to our enemy's gaslighting. I mean, he really has deceived. I mean, what if you're not aware of what's going on by now, you never will be. So it's just those people, you know, and we realize who they are. You can see them when they pass us, coming towards us on the street, on the line there, you know. It's just, but still you try to spare it, of course, but, you know, so usually as soon as someone, the first few words they say, you're like, okay, all right. You know, it's sad, but it's to the point where it's rare that they prove you wrong. All right. But, yeah, it's clear that they knew who they had. They had a big fish and someone, I should say, they could, make their bones with. And he just happened to be, he's going to go into it. I'm not going to, but look at these individuals here that he hasn't even gotten to Ezra Miller, the one that played the Flash, all the shit that he did. All right, taking motherfuckers hostage and shit, but hey, man, wow.
Dealing with that anymore, because they're the right skin color. Jonathan Majors isn't going to get that kind of treatment any more than Nate Parker did. And Nate Parker was acquitted of the false claims against him, but the white media still attacked him and called his accuser his victim. The target is always black men, and they'll go out of their way to do it. Now, before I make my next point, I think I should warn you in advance that some of you are probably not going to like it, but hear me out before you go yelling at your cell phone or desktop computer. White media obsession with removing Clarence Thomas from the Supreme Court also stems from the same motivation as their obsession with Bill Cosby, Nate Parker, Jonathan Majors, and all the rest. Now, before you lose your mind, I'm not a fan of Uncle Thomas. I'm certainly not defending him. I've excoriated him in the past and will continue to do so. I just wanted to be clear, the white left's obsession with removing him from the Supreme Court in specific is because when it comes to setting these scandalous precedents, making these infamous firsts, they always want to make sure that it's a black person that they can use as their precedent setter. The first time we had to do this, it was some nigger that we had to do this with. Clarence Thomas is a sellout and a political prostitute. He's all the things they call him and worse. He deserves whatever ill fortune comes his way. And yes, the main motivation that the white left has for targeting him is because they're trying to reduce the conservative majority on totally illegal Shelby v. Holder ruling that crippled the Voting Rights Act, and he has been a shameless rubber stamp for the white right, and when Harlan Crow shows up, he gladly bends over and grabs the ankles. I have no problem with him being kicked off the court in disgrace. In fact, I hope it happens. He deserves it. But the problem is the white left is making it a point to remove him first. While judicial corruption is rampant throughout the United States, that's just a fact. And the U.S. Supreme Court is no different. In the U.S., these judges never get punished, but for the white left, their all-consuming fixation on Thomas isn't simply because he's been taking money from rich racist billionaires. They specifically want to remove him first so that a black person will be the face for this kind of action. The precedent will be set with him. Though virtually everything that they're saying about Clarence Thomas also applies equally to another ultra-conservative. The difference between Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas is there's actually a strong case to remove Sam Alito, in fact far stronger than the one against Clarence Thomas, and even the white media has to admit this.
Yeah, it's now let's just be clear. We've never been able to identify any one of the benefactors, the many benefactors of Thomas. Harlan Crow's chief among them, but you've got Blockbuster's Wayne Huizenga, you've got several other guys. They never had cases that were directly in front of the court in the kind of extremely bald manner where Thomas did something unusual and you could see, well, there must be some quid pro quo there. We don't have that. We did report earlier this year that Sam Alito went on a lavish trip with Leonard Leo, Leo, one of the activists funded, with a hedge fund billionaire who was a conservative activist who then had a case before the court and Alito didn't recuse. With Thomas, we haven't had that.
If they really wanted to go after corruption on the Supreme Court, and they were trying to reach the low-hanging fruit, Sam Alito is the one that they should be aiming to remove first. Sam Alito is every bit as racist as his predecessor, Antonin Scalia. Both of them are reprobates with no redeeming qualities. Sam Alito's the one who should be impeached and removed first, and they actually have examples of pay-for-play from him. Yet all we hear about is Clarence Thomas. Again, this is no defense of Clarence Thomas. If they do actually...
For those of you that remain loyal to these bullshit-ass political parties, all right, these plantations, especially the Democrats, all right, it's all a sick, twisted game, All right? These are things that we should not, all right, be consumed with. That's what we're trying to tell our people, all right? Because it's all bullshit. You go into Revelation 13th chapter, starting at 11th verse, all right? They're trying to make him, and this is the liberals, mind you, using him as an excuse when you have a fellow Republican. I mean, is it party or is it race? They just told you that you have far more evidence with Alito. So why aren't they targeting him? Think about that.
Pressure him into resigning. Otherwise, put strictures on him that make his life harder. You're not going to have any tears from me. I'm just telling you, understand what their motivation is, why it is that they want to start with him. You can't separate that from this equation. And on a side note, if the white left wants to be mad about the GOP having a supermajority on the Supreme Court, they can blame their hero. She was dying of cancer, she knew she was dying, and she had had plenty of time to resign beforehand, but she refused. Because as she saw it, that Supreme Court seat was hers. She wasn't letting it go until she died. It was her property. She owned it. And she was going to hold on to it because as long as she was on the Supreme Court, she was important. She was a somebody. She knew that the moment she resigned, she would go right back to what she had been before Bill Clinton plucked her from obscurity. And that is... So this woman, who the white left revered so much and sang her praises, I told you about how she was every bit as racist as Antonin Scalia. Go back in the archives on this YouTube channel to check out my takedown of Ginsburg. But it was her stubborn refusal to resign during the Obama years that directly led to the Supreme Court being handed over to the GOP, because she died on Trump's watch, and he got to choose her replacement. It didn't have to go that way, it shouldn't have gone that way, but her ego and her pride was far greater than her common sense or her sense of ideology. So if the white left really wants to be mad at someone over how the Supreme Court is overwhelmingly conservative, they should be mad at her. But they're not. Her transgressions have also been allowed to fall down the memory hole, as always happens when the person being talked about isn't black. Now, I'm pretty sure for a lot of you, you were not at all expecting this take from me, but it's been on my mind for a while whenever I see people in the white media who are getting a full head of steam about Clarence Thomas. Again, for the people who weren't listening, I'm not defending him. Whatever he gets, as long as it's not good, he deserves it. But I'm telling you that there's a reason the white left is focused on him. Clarence Thomas can't be impeached. The Democrats don't control the House, and even if they did, they don't have the votes to convict him in the Senate. So all this wailing about Thomas needs to resign, and what about ethics standards in the Supreme Court, it's largely meaningless. The way
and of course, the other reason being is that it serves as another distraction. You know, people caught up in this political BS, all right? Hey, and they're not paying attention to what's happening overseas here, and also here with the money situation. What's happening on the border, you know, this child sex ring crap going on, and some other things that are far more important than what the media, even this Jonathan Majors thing, all right?
The way the Constitution is written, he really can't be touched, and they know this. He does the bidding of the white megadonors, who also give huge donations to the GOP, and the Democrats, truth be told. So as long as he toes the line, he's politically insulated. This constant...
All right, that's it for that. I'm going to go to another one. And this is a man out of what? No, hold on. Hold on. Let's see. No, that's not what I wanted. Hold on. Let's see. Man out of Detroit here.
What's going on? Is Anton from AntonDaniels.com. I appreciate you guys for continuing to rock with me. Thank you for holding me down. I got to give my thoughts on the conclusion of this trial. And one of the reasons is because I think that it's absolutely disrespectful for how it is that we champion, treat, and then villainize men in society today. And I'm standing on that. And I've been standing on that for years now. And I've always been an advocate for my guys, but yet I'm an equal accountability smoke giver. Meaning that when I see something happen to men or to women, I'm going to hold whoever the culprits are accountable for it, right? And so the same way that guys call into my show and they say, well, Anton, I did this and I did that and she did me wrong. Well, I need to deep dive in what I did in order to put her in a position to be accused of something, and then I get to the root. It doesn't mean that she's innocent, but it does mean that we need to be accountable for our actions. And based off of the evidence that I've seen played out, especially with regard to this whole Jonathan Majors case, and how he was absolutely villainized, and that ain't even the worst part about it, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But when I seen how it's absolutely unfortunate. And so what you basically seen was a man that, because the same way that we say that women shouldn't choose men that they be with is the same way.
This app will track all of your packages in
man.
one place.
Whatever.
This
is the same way that we
Slovakia, man.
Holding him accountable in that he should have never been with her in the first place, right? This place is so beautiful. I love the city of Detroit, but he should have never been with her in the first place, right? But he was with her, and because he was with her, what happened was he was with somebody that was recording him the entire time.
Yeah.
Did not have his best interests at heart, right?
Yeah.
And so she had recordings of him the entire time that they had been together. And those recordings were released. And when they released the recordings, it wasn't even a and standing on his. I need somebody that's really gonna be down for me, not somebody that's gonna take advantage of me. And he stood on that. He was just basically like, yo, if you ain't with me, if you ain't rolling with me, then you against me. I need a woman like Coretta Scott King and Michelle Obama and all of that, which, again, I don't know what kind of delusional pill that he was taking, but he still should not have been held responsible for what was done to him. We can hold Jonathan Majors, and men by default, and this is one of the reasons why we don't have a whole lot of conversations about men. Men by default are held accountable by society. 100%. By default, they're held accountable by society. And we've seen that, even though I don't believe that he did anything wrong, we've seen that play out. That ain't even the worst part about it. You know what the worst part about the whole situation is? You know what the worst part about the whole situation is? Nope, can't get out of the wind. The worst part about the whole situation is, because I don't want the wind to continue to, impede on the conversation that we have. And the worst part about the conversation is that he lost everything. Marvel dropped him, held him accountable. Agents dropped him, held him accountable. People turned against him, held him accountable. What we seen happen with Amber Heard, even though Johnny Depp proved that she was actually against him and he was sleeping with the enemy, is that we seen her in the previews in the upcoming movie of Aquaman 2. Nobody is going to hold the people accountable that's doing the things to you. They're only going to hold men accountable. And this is why, see, it's not about whether or not men are really men or any of that other type of stuff anymore. That's not the conversation that we really have. That's not what it is. You know what it's really about? It's about the fact that the disparity and the opportunities against men are so huge, the gaps between what it is that you can defend yourself from and be accused of and what you got on the line and what you losing is so huge that it's no longer worth it for you to even be able to make yourself available to women that don't have your best interest at heart. Listen, I'm not saying that there's not good women out there. The same way that women that complain about certain men, you can't say that there ain't any good men out there. But what I am saying is it important for us to have... You're not going to get rid of feminism. You're not going to convince people to do things that's in their own best interest based off of not breaking up their families and stuff like that. So now, do we pivot? And is it important for us to have the conversation about is it even worth it to take women seriously or to consider being
Yep.
in a relationship in the first
It's
place?
come to that point, yeah.
Jonathan Majors wasn't married. This is not a situation where it's a domestic dispute between a married couple that got kids or nothing. This is a person that met her allegedly, based off of what I read, Ant-Man and a Wasp. And so when we think about that and we take that into consideration, is it even worth it for you to even take a woman seriously in the first place, considering that the odds are stacked against you and all the I say everything, I mean everything. He had just started getting money. I mean everything. He had just started getting money. He had just started taking off. His whole life was ahead of him. And the only thing that I could see based off of the evidence that's presented was that he aligned himself with the wrong person that ultimately cost him everything. Now, can he recover for it? I have no clue. I have no idea. I mean, I think that the dude is so talented that he may be able to, but why should he have to recover from something that he worked his entire life for, only to be accused from the person that he was sleeping with that ultimately turned out to be the enemy because she never had his best interest at heart in the first place? And now he got convicted by what they're saying is 6 women and a couple different men, and so it was probably a couple simps on the panel. And now they trying to spin it to make it seem like it wasn't really a gender issue, that it's not something against men, that it's supposed to be a black and white issue. That's gaslighting. They lying to you. They trying to divert from what the truth is, and they don't want you to really take into consideration what's best for you, because what's best for you is for you to evaluate what the risks are before you get into a situation in the first place. I'm thankful. I'm very, very thankful that the people that I've surrounded myself by have always had my best interest at heart. And even when I started to get too close to people that didn't, eventually they exposed themselves, and now we can walk away from the situation, and I could be protected as a result of it. The higher up you go, the more successful you become, the more risk it is for you to continue to align yourself with people that's not going in the direction that you're going in. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I'm curious as to what you guys think. Do you think it's even worth it to consider, oh man, I can't believe I'm even saying this. And I had this conversation on MMS this morning, right? Do you think it's even worth it to consider a relationship here in the United States of America? I can't believe I'm actually having a conversation about getting your passport. I'm not in a position to where I ever feel like I would need to do it. I'm cool, I'm chilling, my situation is what it is. I'm very happy, I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable with the people that surround me. And if I wasn't in this situation anymore, I tell you what, I'm very, very, very much, like 99% sure that I would never get into a situation again. But because I'm in a situation that I'm in, I don't have to worry about some of the things that y'all were. I mean, I do, because I'm still a businessman. I still have visibility, so anybody can accuse you of anything. So I got to be careful of who I align myself with. But is it even worth it going forward for guys to consider aligning themselves with people that's here when the laws and the public perception and the Rome mob mentality is so against you? I think that that's a conversation that we might have to start broaching. I didn't want to do it, but I think that that's something that we got to do. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Teach Haley.
Haven't we been saying all along? All right. These scriptures warn you about situations just like this. See, the harm that Christianity, plantation Christianity, has caused our people. Alongside the other bullshit that is taught to us from kindergarten on up. Our people never fully understood that everyone outside of us, first of all, our people were not aware of who they truly are. Again, a reason for us being out there on the highways and byways. All right. letting our people know that, hey, time is short. We're trying to have you get your mind right. All right, come back into, the hell was that? Anyway, come back into the commonwealth that is Israel. That's who you really are. That's who we really are. All right. And as such, you're going to have to cast off this old man. All right. Do away with all the things that you were doing as part of shedding that old man. And you will be surprised at the excuses. Or maybe you won't be surprised that people will give. Well, you know, I don't see what's wrong with with pork. Yeah, that's right. You don't see. But then again, all you have to do is look it up. You know, everything's tip of your fingers now. How bad that is for you. How much more than should you realize that, hey, this was spoken of thousands and thousands of years ago. All right. In a book that a lot of you still think is a fairy tale. You know, we're at a critical stage here as far as our people are concerned. A lot of our people are going to die. All right? They still have their heads in America. They still believe America is going to continue forever, just like our enemy. All right? And they're down with that. They're okay with that. That's why we have to even more so separate ourselves and be ever more cautious and look out for situations like this. Sleeping with the enemy. Sleeping with the enemy. She was recording him, so she had ulterior motives from the jump. Like he said, he's just getting started. He just started making money. And now it's all come crashing down. You know, with us, I'd mentioned Ezra Miller, the one that played the Flash. He's a fucking dirtbag. But the press on him was not all consuming like with this guy here. And it's like, what the hell? You saw the last video that I used, all right? That they were never going to charge her for anything. They were after him. And you have to know a grand jury is ex parte, meaning it's very one-sided. That's the prosecution show. All right, so it's no telling what all was brought up in that. All right, as far as evidence. All right, to go after him. Because this has been going on for several months. All right, and it's like, well, damn. Everybody's, speculating, but they knew all along. They knew all along what they were going to do. All right, so now people just, like the professor said, they had made up their minds long ago that they weren't going to accept him back. They were looking at some way to spin it, just in case that he was acquitted. But wow, this is some wicked ass people. You should be glad that this place is falling apart. All right, there's no, like Biggie said, the more money, more problems. All right, and that's part of that, more problems. You got to be heavily suspect of who you're hanging around. That's like being in a prison in and of itself. All right. Paranoid as hell. And you wonder why some of these celebrities are like, you know, they're mental, you know. I wonder why. Like, everybody's after you. And what's that saying about, oh man, something about being paranoid. I can't remember it offhand. I don't forgot it. But point being that, well, you have no idea, and that usually that is the case, that you have underestimated, all right, just how many people are after you was the point. I can't remember how it's phrased though. But anyway, yeah, so just wanted to bring that to your attention that, yeah, they want to call these other countries shitholes. But what is this place? And I believe it was it Khrushchev? One of those high-ranking Russians from way back in the day had said that America was going to destroy itself from the inside out. And you see that with, and of course, a lot of that is being done on purpose. I mean, ultimately, it's the Most High controlling it, of course. But look at the degeneracy, the debauchery, which is part of that. But I mean, some during session. I mean, these are the people that are over us, and they're dirtbags. We just have to get up out of here. We should want to be up out of here. All right, that's that spirit of Isaiah 51:14. Let's get that real quick. All right, you should want. Like I say, this is not natural. Like I say, if you're in a relationship, you know, and you're, you know, got mutual respect for each other, you know, more power to you. You know, Isaiah 51:14, the captive exile, like I said, this is the state of mind we should be in, the captive, because we are those captive exiles. The captive exile hasteneth that he may be loosed. He got this woman. She worked on the set in some capacity. I can't remember what her role was, but again, it goes back to, at the very least, you should have someone as close to on your level as possible. There's no guarantee, of course, but they also have something to lose. She had nothing to lose. All right, she had only to gain. And like he said, you can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be a civil suit filed now that that guilty verdict has come in. Ain't that some shit? So I mean, I'm not going to even speculate as to, you know, damn, it's some fucked up shit. It's always Jake, man. All right, so hey, once again, I hope, you know, talking about Jonathan Majors here. Or otherwise, events through the scriptures, which your so-called pastor surely does not. That's why a lot of people. And one of the things that Great Millstone, all right, has done, they have forced people to reread the Bible, and hopefully to break free from the shackles, all right, that were placed on your mind from what these devils had taught. all these decades and centuries, you know, like it says in Revelation 20th chapter about, you know, the nations being deceived. And guess who did that? All right. Our main enemy, the nation of Edom, a so-called white man. All right. That's what he did. And now it's almost like he's desperate, especially when you think about Amalek, all right, over there in the land of Israel. You know, that whole place got filthy, filthy, filthy people. All right, in more ways than one. Hey, so with that, until the next video, shalom.